I saw a couple people here this morning that I've known for a while, and they've said, "What's a hotel guy doing here?" My sole goal here with these experts in the industry is to find out the difference between extended stay and serviced apartments. So we're going to drill down into that and really settle on something today. So Piers, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I've got three wonderful experienced gentlemen here to talk about the tasks at hand. So let's get started by quick introductions. We'll start at the far end. John Wolfert, the co-CEO of Reside Worldwide. John, you've had a lot of experience in extended stay. Give us a little bit of detail about what you're doing now, and tell me what you think the biggest difference is between extended stay and serviced apartments.
Yeah, so Reside is my background is both extended stay hotels and corporate/serviced apartments. My entire life has been vacillating back and forth with that. So I and Reside, we actually see it as the same marketplace, right? We're all calling on the same customers. The difference comes to the product type and the restrictions that you may have, whether it's zoning or what the building is zoned for. So we really see the marketplace as the same, and we also see this, this whole alternative accommodations world blurring the lines between all these products and all these customers. I think Patrick said earlier that this market's getting more awareness from a business standpoint and a consumer standpoint, so it's starting to attract more attention and thus more customers. So we feel like we're all the same family, right? Customers sometimes choose an extended stay hotel. Sometimes they choose a corporate apartment or a serviced apartment based on the needs of that particular traveler and what they're looking for. So I guess my answer is we see it as the same.
Okay. Now you worked with Jack DeBoer, who many consider the father of extended stay. Tell us a little bit about maybe what you learned from him, one or two things in terms of how it applies to what you're doing today.
Yeah, I would say a couple things. Early on, right, Jack was the founder of Residence Inn, Summerfield Suites, Candlewood Suites, and there it was about taking this marketplace and matching the product to it, and it was really about direct sales because we never had a brand that was powerful enough to drive 40% contribution into your property. So you had to have a ground force out there calling on the companies, and it was very business B2B focused back then. I think it's changed a little bit now as they're part of big brands and there's more awareness. Obviously access to that inventory is a lot easier. So I think that's changed a little bit. And then at the core, Jack DeBoer is a developer, right? His interest in development is like this. His interest in the brand and operating the properties is like this. I'm looking at Gary DeLapp and David Kim here, guys that I worked with in the past that worked with Jack recently and know the same thing. So I think, there's an opportunity in both those spaces, I guess, is what I've learned. Development's important, but in the end, you got to deliver to those customers or you don't really have a brand.
Yeah, I think we're going to hear that kind of theme throughout this conversation on this panel and through the day. So thank you for being here, John. We appreciate it. Next, we have Larry Corman, the co-CEO of Corman Communities, as well as the president of AKA Hotel Residences. So Larry, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company and what you do.
I'm part of a fourth generation company, 100 years evolving from home builders to apartment to developers. I'm looking at that logo over there, which could be a three-dimensional square, but it was, to me, a building that my grandfather built for my father in 1962 that opened in 1966. Philadelphia was not ready for pie-shaped apartments, so my father recognized an unmet need between the daily stay of a hotel and the annual lease of an apartment, and people said, well, I'm here for 2 or 3 days. He added some furniture, a toaster, housekeeping, and evolved this furnished apartment concept. In 1986, when I came in, we had 23 apartments. We branded that as Corman Suites, the only name that we sort of could brand and trademark. And over that 33 years, we've evolved it. MJ's here also. She's been a major part of that. Evolved it from Corman Suites to Corman Communities, take it out of Philadelphia. to North Carolina, Georgia, and then recognized that until we could really be known as the best in our industry of what we were doing and the full expression, justify the full expression, we need to be in New York. So we started in New York. We now have 6 properties in New York with AKA. And I think it's the full expression. You had asked a question between extended stay, corporate housing, furnished apartment, and what we consider to be hotel residences or service residences. We had talked about Wayne Huizenga just passing, and very similar, changed the meaning of what extended stay is with Extended Stay America. And I think it became known more space, less costs, families, 1-week stays, glorified hotel rooms. I think corporate housing has been acknowledged as Fortune 500 companies sending their people away for 2 months, 3 months, and staying in furnished apartments under the tag corporate housing. For us, we've differentiated in New York City when the zoning laws changed, where we have some properties like United Nations Service and Sudden Place, where even if you added the sprinkler systems, you still had to be 30 days, unless you were Airbnb in a condo or apartment, they could be daily around us. But in commercial zone like Times Square and Central Park, we put in all the life safety systems, sprinklers, smoke purge, and we do weekly stays. So we differentiate our product, hotel residences, based on length of stay from service residences, but consider that category, what we do, different than our other brand, AV, where we purchase condominiums, urban locations, high rises, about 100 residents per, and add hotel services, resort amenities. So that's our unique blue ocean within that field. We have another brand, AV, which is more suburban, mid-rise, half apartments, half furnished apartments on a monthly basis that we view as furnished apartments. So our differentiation is the product itself being more condominium geared based on finishes. And that's the evolution from us going from home builders to furnished apartments is that expression. And I compared it to you on the phone, what we do being like Vegas versus some of the new properties that have come in from the hotel side to call themselves extended stay that are more like Macau, where they hired the designers, they built this, but there's one dimensionality to it. I think there is a DNA and a soul and a spirit to AK that has evolved through those generations, finger on the pulse, and seeing how people have changed their lifestyles, their need for flexibility, global citizens recognizing the importance of building bridges versus walls, appreciating design, communal and private spaces. So I think there's that evolution for us to this serviced residence arena.
Okay, so the title of this is Developers Debate Hotels versus Extended Stay versus Serviced Apartments versus Mixed Use. You have experienced all 4 of those. What's your favorite?
Well, certainly
only one.
It's AKA. It's the highest expression of what we envisioned living, and you're dealing with not what they're wearing, what not eating. A lot of the people staying with, they're going through a separation. They're leaving their family. Someone in the family is going through a medical. So you're really dealing with some form of chaos, and we're at the end of the day providing a sense of calm with what we do with AKA, and we're doing it in urban environments. So I would say the most satisfying is AKA.
All right, great. Thank you for being here, Larry. Last but not least, we have Gordon Dole, the CEO and founder of Obasa Group. That's a perfect segue. On the phone, you told me the best part about your job is that you can help people in situations that Larry was talking about. So give us a little bit of background on what you do and what your company does.
We've found ourselves focusing in anything that makes sense in the real estate sector. We started off with single-family residences and graduated into the mixed-use multifamily, and we actually got involved in corporate housing by mistake. It wasn't because we were smart. It was just stumbling upon a need and filling it. And I echo with Larry here that helping is probably the most meaningful, where we can offer somebody a healthy lifestyle environment that helps them stay regimented within their daily routines. To me, it's just building on the right foundation to a successful business model. Not only can people wake up in the morning and start their day the way they would at home, but they can save money. And that to me is a distinction to extended stay, but there's still a place for it. And I think that corporate housing in the as a whole is evolving. What we need to do is get more, the way I see it moving into the future is infuse more in technology. We're investing heavily in technology right now. We see it as a pinnacle to make it easy for people to, for people in the industry to, I would say, speak to the rising millennials. That's where I think our focus is lying, and it's in acquisition of real estate as well. It's something that's in our blood. Mixed use, where we're able to either repurpose commercial buildings into residential condominiums, retail on the main floor. We like to sprinkle in tenant profiles that will be of service to the to the tenant profile, and just meeting their needs. Being customer-led right now in this space is really the trick shot, kind of like getting the puck in the top right-hand corner of the net. We have to be thinking about them and meeting their needs and anticipating them.
Okay. You do know our parent company is located in Nashville. The Predators, just President Cup champions so far. So just wanted to give that little plug to our founder, Randy Smith, a huge Predators fan. So talk a little bit more about technology real quick. Is that front of the house, back of the house, or both that you're investing in?
In 2015, we launched a minimal viable product to meet the needs of our clients as a single solution to their needs coast to coast across Canada. And we went to Boston in, I think, the following October, and to the ERC. And we expanded to 24 countries in 10 months. So we're going through, I think, identity crisis number 38 now. And who are we? What are we? And we found that, to be uber easy and one less click than VRBO is our goal. And to form a national, a global coalition of like-in-mind, good quality providers that care about the client. See, the difference between sharing economy and what we're doing is that our supply chain is proven professional managers like, our colleagues here in the audience. And that's a point of distinction. That's what makes us better, special, and different. Yeah.
So we've heard this morning already several mentions of sharing economy, the disruptors, as Pierce called them this morning. Larry, talk a little bit about the impact that a VRBO or Airbnb has had on your business. You mentioned about the residential zoning. I mean, there could be a whole panel just on that right now, but I
think that's a good follow-up to what was just talked about with the Star Report, because if you just take New York City, where there might have been 50,000 hotel rooms, and there was another 50,000 built in a short time period, and then the proliferation of Airbnb, another 50,000, there was an obvious ripple effect to occupancy. Occupancy went down in order to bring occupancy up, because every partner wants their occupancy back up, so that 8 out of 10 stands. The ADR, that's why shocking that I think ADR went down over that time period in order to turn the dial down on rate, up in occupancy to get that. And I think it's just recently in the last 6 months that rates have gone back up. So I think the booking windows have shortened in our industry. I think the length of stays have shortened. Maybe companies are willing to spend less. Movies are a big part of our business, production companies. They're being shot in a shorter time period to reduce costs. Yet you have all the costs going up with Local 6 for hotel unions. You have your taxes going up. And then the proliferation of OTAs, third parties, that adds up. So we've actually created our own, Jack is here, our Director of Revenue Management, called Net RevPAR. What does it cost if you're putting a lot into technology to juice your own website SEO to get natural, it costs nothing. A human sales force costs something, commissions. When you're paying a third party, if it's 15% to 28%, that's expensive because there's very little meat on the bone. So I think all those different factors that make up the Star Report, there's general numbers you see there, but we each know individually the impact at each property. And Airbnb, in some ways domestically, was good because service residents as a concept which was well known in London and throughout Europe and Asia, was not as well known in America. You holidayed for 2 or 3 days, you stayed at a Four Seasons or a Marriott, and you came back. People in Europe would come and holiday for a month. They wanted to know the spirit of a city, live like a local, and were willing to stay at a residence versus a room. So Airbnb, to some ways, has educated, because a lot of what we do in this room is educating. We're not just communicating and connecting. Part of that communication is educating who we are, what we do, how we differentiate ourselves. So I think Airbnb helped expedite that process of understanding the benefits of having a bedroom, a dining room, a living room, a kitchen. So in that sense, it helped. But I wish there was a more level playing field. Let the mom and pop kettles rent out their second bedroom while they're there, but you don't want these de facto hotels. So I was mentioning some of the zones that are zoned residentially 30-day stays, where the condo and apartment are renting daily and weekly at a much lower cost. They don't have the same costs we have. They're not collecting the same taxes. They're disrupting the condo owners, the apartment renters, driving up rates. So I think there's a benefit to Airbnb, and it's helped us understand the residence versus room, but I'd like to see a more level playing field, and I think there's an even ground, and you compare it to cabs, where Uber came in, and whether it was Philadelphia, where they paid $500,000 for a medallion, or New York, $1 million, it wasn't an even playing field for those cabbies that had worked so hard and paid so much for that. So I just want to see with these disruptors, not that they just come in and offer a low price to the marketplace, but that it's a level playing field to those already established in their industry. So we talked about that, and I think Airbnb is great. I like having an open mindset. We're going to work with them with Airbnb Plus as another sliver to generate business. Hopefully it replaces the expensive OTAs at that 3 to 5% versus 15 to 25%. But I like us to have a playing field that's even, yet we always have the onus on us to make ourselves better. So one of our defenses has putting more money back into our product and create something that those who really wouldn't consider an alternative would prefer something that has a certain betting that's like the top hotel. So for us, it's almost been a defense mechanism to put more into our product and create it even more upscale against that disruptor at that time.
Can I tag on to that? Because I think, Larry, you hit on something that we believe as well. We believe that that all this disruption is taking place, which is creating awareness in our space, and in the end, it's the people that have the inventory have the power, right? Airbnb is a channel, just like Expedia and all of the other OTAs. So we're focused on those exact same things. Is let's get a revenue stream by acquisition, then let's put some properties and buildings under that revenue stream instead of renting and paying a landlord. Let's pay ourselves, plus, and more importantly, control the experience, which is exactly what Larry and those are doing at AK&AF. And then you can differentiate your product significantly more than every other corporate apartment out there or every other extended stay hotel out there. You can control that experience, and that in the end is what we feel is success at Reside, is to build the brand, control that experience, and control properties by doing that. So
this is open to anybody that maybe wants to answer this. Would it ever be advantageous for you or your company to list on Airbnb or one of the sharing economy sites, or is that not something you would consider?
Actually, in my past brands, we've done that, right? We've posted inventory on Airbnb because we believe it to be a channel. Right, it's
5% commission too, right? I mean,
right. It's lower than an OTA. You're paying anywhere from 12 to 20% through OTAs. So it's a low-cost channel, and it created awareness. And in the end, if you deliver a great experience at your brand or your property to that guest, they're smart enough to realize they can come direct to you next time, that they don't necessarily have to go through Airbnb. So it's the same thing that's going on in the hotel industry. There's a big push to bypass the OTAs, whether you're giving them extra points or giving them some perk to book directly with you. So I think the answer is yes.
Gordon?
Yeah, the booking platforms, whether it's Airbnb or Booking.com or just pick one, they're a springboard really to accelerate awareness and drive conversion for your brands. And that's always a good thing. And like John says, it's just a way for allowing them an opportunity to be exposed to your brand, and then they know how to go direct later.
We tried it. We're willing to try everything and always do, and it was to no avail. We were lost in a myriad of places that were much less expensive, and we got nothing. But we experimented. But for the last 2 years, we've been meeting with Chip Conley at Airbnb and talking about doing something that he envisioned, which was Airbnb Luxe. They then bought Luxury Retreats and made that their Airbnb Luxe, and then started talking to us, along with Cameron and Josh and some others, about Airbnb Select. So when they did their Airbnb 10-year launch, we were a founding partner under Service Residences for North America, but they changed the name that day to Airbnb Plus, and the justification for doing it was being open-minded, building a skeletal body for our brand to go global, which is what we've always envisioned with AKA, and be open to a new way to generate other business beyond the exorbitant OTAs. But the first and most important thing was, I think all of us sort of got together. I don't want to use the word collusion in any way, but we all said,
I think you just
we all sort of said it's not fair that the OTAs are saying that you have to have higher prices on your website so that whatever you give us, Expedia, it has to be lower than anybody else. And I think we all sort of got together without saying it individually and said, no, if somebody comes to our website, they should get the best available price on our site. And that was a big breakthrough, I think, for our industry. Hotels started doing it. I think Hilton, you guys saw the commercials a year and a half ago, stop clicking around. I think the Barry Sternlichs, the Marriotts, the Hiltons said, enough of that. Let's take control of our own fate. And we've done that by let that person come here. And I think you said it best. We were willing to pay those exorbitant fees to try and connect with new people, and once they stay with us, they'll love us, and they'll. But they got conditioned to continue to go back on, thinking they were getting the best deal, and it was just too much meat off the bones with the rates that we had to give that. So I think we're all sort of taking control of our own fate and being a little bit more aggressive with OTAs and willing to try things like Airbnb. So I think you have to always be open to find other ways to communicate, connect, and drive business without having exorbitant costs attached to it.
Okay. John, I said I'm a hotel guy. So I look at a hotel, it's a big box, it's there for 50, 75, 100 years or more. On the phone call we had to talk about this panel, you talked about flexing the size of your company to meet the needs. So going out and getting more units when you need them and backing off when you don't. That kind of surprised me. Talk a little bit about the importance of that when you're talking about corporate apartments, service departments, and how that maybe gives you an advantage over the extended stay model, hotel model, et cetera.
Well, I think Patrick would probably agree on the STAR. That's part of the challenge in this world is, in our corporate housing world, how do you measure supply? You can manage both supply and demand in that flexible corporate apartment world. So how do you measure something that's both dimensions are flexing? So we've always felt that you have core inventory that you keep, and then flexible inventory, because part of the value proposition of a corporate/service department company is that you can be where the customer wants to be. Now, is that ideal to have 20 different locations? Not really, but if the customer wants to take you there, they'll take you there. But from an operational standpoint, it's so much easier to have pods that you work, and if you can direct the companies there, that's the perfect situation. So as we think about it at Reside, we think to have a building that we own, control the experience, and then augment that inventory with flexible. So that allows you then to run the 88% occupancy that you always see in the corporate housing report, and why extended stay hotels run 56 or 76, 78%, right? Because they're always going to take it on the chin in December and January. It's tough to run 88% in December and January. So I think it's a benefit, and that's why we like a blended mix of that, where you're doing some core and some flexible.
Gord, do you follow that same follow, or do you like the standard block?
When we started in the industry, we owned condos we couldn't sell. We reached absorption, there was no more velocity in the marketplace, so we ended up renting them out furnished. So we had fixed inventory. But, we're also a client-led company, so, when there's needs, we pepper our inventory wherever they need to. You know, we set up 70 units in Nashville a couple months ago and set up and took it down. And as long as it pencils and makes sense, then, you know, we capture success by meeting the needs of our clients. So I think it's a smart move. I think the way John explained it was bang on. There's really no secrets to this business. It's just being client-led and doing a good job and making sure that we hear if it's not so we can make it right.
Talk about being client-led. You talked a story about a nun that kind of helped you figure out.
You like
this?
that?
I did. I thought it was, you know, it was a guy starting out. You meet somebody that kind of the light bulb goes on. Tell us that quickly. Tell us that story and what it means. How it
it's not. It's not a short story, everybody. You know, it's funny. We bought a broken condo. It was really well situated in the top of a bridge overlooking the river, downtown Saskatoon, which is probably the smallest market on earth. And, you know, I slipped my card and a note underneath all the doors in the building, just letting them know who their new landlord was. And I got a phone call. This lady had a very strong presence on the phone, and she started going down a love list of everything that wasn't right. And I you know, being client-led, I was at her doorstep the next morning, and when she opened up the door, she was a nun, full-dressed nun. I wasn't expecting that. And yeah, so, you know, the big lesson there was, you know, we capture our success by meeting the needs of the client and being a good listener and, you know, exceeding their expectations. And sometimes that's not always easy. We're in the hospitality industry. You guys know it's not always easy, but it's something to aspire to.
I think what you said on the phone was that, you know, the nun then, once she figured out that you were there to help her,
yeah,
she ended up getting more units from you. You know, so I picture this scene from the Blues Brothers, you know, where she says, yes, and I want 7 more today, and I want 7 more tomorrow.
Yeah, so I got a phone call maybe half a year later, and she says, Gordon, I need 6 more units. I need them for 6 months. There's a 98% chance we'll renew, and this is all we can pay. So I worked the numbers backwards. I had all these condos. I couldn't sell them in a building on the other side of the river. So I figured, you know, I'm an opportunist and I'm an optimistic guy. So I figured, well, you know, 12 months is what I heard. But I did all the numbers based on the 6 months, and it penciled. And she phoned me up on month 5 and said, Gordon, I'm moving to Edmonton. We're packing up. I'm giving you 30 days notice. So what we did is we said, well, where are you staying in Edmonton? And she didn't know. So I got on the phone and I figured out, well, you know, how hard can this be? If it works in Saskatoon, it'll work in Edmonton. And sure enough, we were able to find her something. And that was National Parole Board of Canada, which has been our client ever since then.
So adapting to clients is important for both extended stay, for all of these, really. But Larry, talk a little bit about how maybe you've learned that lesson. What have you learned along the way? What advice can you give to someone that may be looking into investing in these types of deals, or, you know, looking for secrets, as Gordon says, there's none. What lesson or two would you like to share?
I think the 2 general lessons that we talk about today, given the competitive climate, is collaborations, is to work with others to form synergies. So being open to an Airbnb, being open to an Aman, that full gamut. I'm chair of the Philadelphia Film site in Philadelphia, and we just partnered with both the Hamptons Film Festival and the Montclair Film Festival, and that collaboration will allow us to be a little bit more competitive with such a strong force as Tribeca Film, let's say. So I think in any general business, if you can collaborate today to create synergies, is a positive. In our business, we've always tried to generate revenues close to that of a hotel and expenses close to that of an apartment to maximize, optimize NOI. And it's become challenging. It's almost, in some ways, as costs go up, as rates go down, it can flip-flop. So you've got to be proactively doing things to keep that generation of revenues and that expense control. And I think one of the things that your fingers on the pulse tell you when you look at today's world is lifestyle experience becomes very important. People want the basics. Cleanliness, you got to champion the basics. Cleanliness, crispness, presentation. But you have to be open to new experiences. And we started about 15 years ago something called Live It, which was recognizing if somebody's away from their family or away from their home for 2 weeks, 3 months, it's an opportunity to take them beyond just the traditional watching cable TV or having a bar and do better bars and better cable. So we said, if you always had a dream of doing something and then you got caught in everyday life with family or work, and you wanted to learn how to play the guitar or take French lessons or do something, I kidded Glenn, like Fantasy Island, that if you wanted to do something that you didn't have the time, and now you're away from home and you have this time, let us put it together for you. So adding experiences, not just seeing the sights of New York or seeing the sights of DC, but doing something that's maybe a dream of yours where we can make that happen. You have this residence, you have this group of people who know the people there. So I think taking it to that next level of thinking beyond just four walls, offering a rate for a bill. Think of it as they're leaving this home and more about the individual and less about the product. Less about the location, less about the product, and what does that individual need? And it's different from what the other individual staying with you needs. And I think the more you can personalize it and create a human experience for that individual or family, I think the more you'll connect with that person. And word of mouth, at the end of the day, is still the best generator of new business. So that would be my short-winded for macro, micro.
All right, John, let's twist the question just a hair then. So tell us one thing that you have learned in a positive way, and then what's a mistake that maybe you've made along the way that you think people should learn from?
Well, I'm going to tag my learning on to what Larry said because it's a story that with Jack DeVore. So, right, this new product he'd been working on for a couple years called WaterWalk. We opened the first one in Wichita, Kansas, and half hotel, half apartment, right? So corporate apartment, hotel, apartment. And he's ground on the product, right? Looking at the diagrams, walking the construction site every day. You know, every day he's in town, he's walking that thing, he's grinding on it. He comes, sits in the lobby for every day he's in town, sits in the lobby, a lot of times with me, just sitting there talking. He's talking to guests, talking to employees. And after about 2 weeks, we're sitting there and he says, John, this is the strangest thing. He goes, every time I talk to a guest or a client that's coming in on a tour, or all they want to talk about is the team. Nobody wants to talk about how the apartment works for them, that there's a washer and dryer in the apartment, that they get this great breakfast and all these things. And he goes, that's the damnedest thing I've ever seen. He goes, all it is about the people. So to Larry's point, we had a team. The WaterWalk concept was to have a team that took care of the guests. They're there a long time. You get a chance to know them. You do some favors for them. You help them get acclimated to the new area. You watch their dog if they need their dog watched. Those types of things, and that ingrained the team to the guest. And so that was a huge lesson. And for a guy, 86-year-old guy that's been doing this a long time, he just couldn't get over that, right? Because he was always focused on the physical product. So that's kind of pile on to Larry. Lesson, I think you know, no matter how whether it's development or operations or investment in this space, you always have to look at the return, right? Because we can build the greatest product, right? We can put all the greatest amenities in there, but you've always are value engineering, trying to find out what's the right mix of guest amenities, service, construction, amenities you're putting in the product. So, right, in corporate apartment, what's the rent, the base rent you're paying? Do you have enough margin? So that I think we're always trying to look through that, and you want to make sure your numbers are working.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So opportunities out there. We know that the hotel industry is a gazillion-dollar industry. The extended stay industry, I think Mark and Kim, Highland Group, I think it's like $13 billion or something like that. Mark, you can correct me on the panel next, right? Corporate housing is roughly $3 billion or so. Mm-hmm. Where does it go from here? That to me seems like there's a huge opportunity for in the States, for in North America in general. Is it about educating the consumer that this is out there? How does it get to that? How can you increase it 5, 6-fold, let's say in the next 10 years, 20 years? Anybody? Gord?
The overall industry is published $555 billion overall. If you take a look at the private accommodation sector, and that's what really motivated us to step on the gas to do roll-ups and by existing operating companies is because the actual, if you look at the private accommodation sector, and we fit well within it, it's about $106 billion a year industry. It's got a run rate of about 17 to 19 billion a year, and the actual private accommodation side of that is about 8 to 9. So it's trending a little heavier, a little better than the actual hotel. And how we're going to, what I would say, capitalize on that is by accelerating awareness by using these platforms. MyKey is one of them that we've invested in, where it's an opportunity for people to get known out there, to have their brand get recognized that on one of these things 24 hours a day, and that's where we're heading. It's technology, and it's being easy to use and anticipating their needs. And these other platforms are not a bad thing. They're actually a good thing for us to be able to capitalize on them.
So Larry, not that you want new competitors, right? But how does the industry grow from an investment standpoint, from a consumer awareness standpoint, to make more of an impact?
For us, we always envisioned AK as a global brand, as I mentioned earlier. So I think the idea for us is we've built a very strong foundation over generations, and certainly over the 15 years that we've been operating AK. So for us, growth really is coming from taking this product to cities that we're not at, Miami, San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, but then take it beyond that. We have a foot in London. We'd like to do a lot more in London, Paris, Rome, San Sebastian. We'd love to grow the platform globally, 2, 3, 4 properties per year. So for us, I think the growth is ahead of us. There's a big opportunity. I worry in the industry at large that there's this downsizing, people going from the suburbs to the cities, people going from a bigger house to a smaller house, hotels going to these pod hotels, and you're seeing proliferation in Asia. I think you're going to see it here in New York, and the gentleman doing that in New York's taking it nationally. So I think there'll always be new challenges ahead, and I think you have to stay the course, champion the basics, and show that justification as to why that makes sense for that individual. And you don't have to be everything to everyone. You can stand for something and be specific to a segment. So I think that hasn't changed. We've had times where we've tried to do offerings where we expanded our reach, and that hasn't worked for us as well as staying specific. So it's okay if we're a sliver of the total. So I think staying true to that mission is important.
John?
And I think, I said it earlier, we see the lines blurring across these industries, so they eventually meld to one. And our mandate, and you've heard me talk about controlling the customer, so we're rolling up operating companies because we like the localness as well, right? We don't want to be a stellar or stale brand of everybody does everything like the robots. We want a little bit of entrepreneurship and local flavor in the mix, and then drop properties under there so we control the experience. And we think that technology will help us do those things as well, because what's the small company doing these days to compete? They're looking at technology, they're looking at going global, they're trying to get clients that are outside their market to come in, and when you connect all those dots, you create this network, if you will, that works together, acts very similar, has a local feel, and delivers that experience that will cross between extended stay hotel, serviced apartment. You have all those mixes in there. So we feel like those are the key elements for us.
Okay. Kind of running out of time here, but we do have time for 1 or 2 quick questions. Yes, sir. Can you throw
the catch box?
Knock,
if you can pop it out. That's great. Just tried to
all right.
do as I can.
Ooh, nice grab.
Good catch.
I play cricket. I'd just like to ask the panel about these different asset classes from an investment point of view, particularly in the US. And let me tell you where I come from. So we run over 500 apartments in London, and our extended stay, which we talked about, are a minimum of 90 days. And they have an asset class. But what becomes important there from an investment point of view is that they're valued on market rate. So although we generate very healthy profits from both our short stay and extended stay, those buildings sitting empty or operating over a period of time are generating far more than the cash assets. So as we're all looking for investors, what is it about those different asset classes, which are the ones that are really over a cycle and maybe 10, 15 years are actually going to produce the biggest return to the owner?
It's market oriented. It depends where you are.
Okay, so let's take New York. Let's take New York.
I think I got to pass that over to Larry.
Yeah.
Well, I found having a higher upscale product and having a very strong brand attached to it lowers your risk in downtimes and increases your return in good times. So I think if you're going to err on the side of going higher scale, one of the reasons we add the weekly with the monthly is to fill those gaps for return on investment, so that some people who think they're staying 10 or 14 days ends up staying 3 or 4 months. We had Kerry Washington stay with us. She would only stay at Beverly Hills because it was 10 days. She was getting her kitchen done. Her husband was playing football. She got pregnant, felt comfortable there, and stayed 5 months. So if we didn't offer weekly, we wouldn't have got that person in the first place to know that she was comfortable there. So we'll use weekly to generate monthly, but we'll also use weekly to fill those gaps. So 3 months is very hard. And I don't consider 3 months to be necessarily extended stay. Are you able to change any of the zoning to get weekly in there with that, or monthly in there with that? We have a property in Marylebone, and we're able to get daily, weekly, monthly. We choose not to do daily, but we use the weekly to fill those gaps to increase the return on investment.
Well, I may add on and just say that I think it's a evolving asset class, right? It's not a traditional asset class right now in the U.S., but it's becoming it. In my past world, I've seen it in WaterWalk, where it's this hybrid asset class, and it's starting to get some traction. And we really believe that the economics work too, because if you take a traditional multifamily product and layer on, that's your backstop. You buy an existing property, or you build something that's A+ quality, and drop in 50%, 100% furnished units, still doing 30+. The economics are compelling, right? You almost double the NOI from that asset. So as the market starts to tighten up in traditional multifamily, we believe there's an opportunity to give investors a higher return with a multifamily backstop, right? In the worst case, if you don't get to 100% furnished, you have 50, you're driving 50% more NOI. And if the market goes to complete sideways, you can drop back to normal multifamily.
You have to be a chameleon.
Right. You flex your inventory to, just like we do in the service department, corporate housing world, to meet the demand of the customers.
Okay. We've got to stay on track so the program stays on track. 30 seconds each. We're going to go down the line, starting with John. The most important thing you want the audience to walk away from this session today is 30 seconds.
I already said it, right? Recap: blurring lines, alternative inventory is always going to be approaching us. We want to control the experience, and we want to grow. So we look at everybody in this room as either a partner of ours or a chance to become part of the Reside brand. We'd be interested in talking to anybody that's looking to grow their company or has assets or wants to play in the asset world. We're open and willing to talk to everybody.
Great. Thank you for being here, John. Larry, 30 seconds.
I would say passion and compassion. Be passionate about what you do. The people you work with should be passionate about what they do. I think the compassion side is really understanding the individual residents living with you, but also the individual team members working with you. If they're feeling good, they'll project that to your team and to the other residents staying with you. But really being compassionate about what they're going through and what their needs are while staying with you is very important. So I'd say that passion and compassion.
Great. Thank you for being here, Larry. And Gord, the final words?
Love it. Yeah, love what you do. Do it because we love it. Technology, that's a big one. We love your brands. We want to market your brands. And as far as MyKey is concerned, we're looking to expand in the real estate sector, and if there's anybody that needs help, let us know. We do project funding. We're not a hedge fund or a private equity company. Our cost of capital is much lower, And if anybody wants to talk about that, I'm here.
Great. Thank you for being here, Gord. We appreciate that. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure. Thank you for your time. Thank you.